Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And my guest today is Seth Rainess, who is a transgender man, a transgender coach, educator, and speaker. Welcome.
How are you?
I'm great and thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
So, part of what I want to do is get your story. I think it's important because it demystifies a lot of things. And also, there are people out there who want to know that if they're having the same experience, they're not the one and only.
Right, right.
So you were born as a female.
Correct.
In the can I dare say it? Will you hate me?
53.
Okay. In 1953. And how old were you when you kind of really identified yourself as a male?
It's not that you identify yourself as a male, but I think I was around 8 years old, maybe a little before that. I knew I was different, and I knew I didn't like all the girly things, and my mother could never get me to wear pink, and nor dresses, because in those days there were dresses with crinoline. So believe me, it was worse than wearing a dress. It was scratchy and itchy, but I just knew I was different. And maybe I was a tomboy back then because, in those days, that's what everybody passed you off to be, and that you'll grow out of it.
One of the things that I think about is I once said to somebody, how old were you when you knew you were gay? And he said, how old were you when you knew you weren't, And it's kind of, you come into the world, you're a child, and life goes on, and then we go into kind of identity training. And people start telling us, oh, you're a person who is good at this, or is good at that, or not good at this. And then somewhere along the way, something happens, and the information is, oh, you're not quite what we anticipated. Or you're not quite, like you say, a tomboy. Was there a judgment around that, or just kind of you knew that you didn't like girly things?
Well, I didn't feel like a girl, I didn't act like a girl, and I certainly tried as best as I could not to wear clothes that were girly. Again, in the 60s, there were transgender people, because they've been around for a long time, but the information wasn't at your fingertips. And I remember growing up in Baltimore, they used to give IQ tests at schools, and I wasn't doing very well on the IQ test. One year I'd be smart, and one year I wouldn't. My mother said, you can't have that. So by however the recommendations came to be, they ended up sending me to Johns Hopkins, who at that time did all the psychological testings in town, but also they sent me to Dr. John Money, who was one of the biggest pioneers in gender identity. And
who decided to send you to them?
Well, I don't know if it was my mother or the school, or because of specifically for an IQ test, because that's where they did that testing down at Johns Hopkins, and maybe from the results of the test, and they also did the MMPI, which is the Minnesota Personality Test. I don't know if they do it anymore, and maybe from the results of that, I ended up sitting in front of Dr. John Money, and as an 8-year-old child, he held up two pictures, one of female anatomy and one of male anatomy, and he asked me, if I knew what both of them were, which one I had and which one I wanted. And at 8, I was smart enough to give him the answer he wanted, and not the answer I knew, because I didn't know if I was going to get in trouble. I had no idea at 8 years of age.
So what did you say?
I told him that, the female anatomy, and that was so wrong, because that's not where I thought and how I felt. But as an 8-year-old, I didn't know if I'd get punished. You don't know. So that's always something that's played in my brain, and even to this day, I tried to get my records, but I couldn't get it, because I really wanted to find out. Patient was brought to me because. And what? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because that's then and that's now, and you've got to be able to move on and do what you want to do for your life, because it's only one life, and there's no do-overs and there's no going back.
Right.
And
so now you're 8, and then you fast forward, you're a teen. Well, how are you operating in life?
Well, who knows if I was operating well or not? But I knew that I liked women. So in my way of thinking in those days, if I liked women, I must be gay, because, there's no other explanation for it. Again, there was no internet. You know, maybe if you got to the library, you could find a book, but what are you looking for? There was nowhere to find out what that was and what it's called and how you look for it. And you certainly couldn't go up to the librarian and go, you know, I want a book on this, but I'm not sure what it is. You know, you just couldn't do that. So unfortunately, maybe it hardened me and it prepared me with a very strong foundation. But I lived quite a bit of my life as being gay, and I was in a relationship for 20 years, and you know, thinking I was happy and going about my life. But I always felt like a square peg in a round hole.
So, I'm just going to ask you one question. So you were in a relationship with a woman for 20 years, but did you hide the fact that you were attracted to women for periods of time? Were you okay with it?
Well, when I was in college, I mean, you know, that's when your sexual orientation, you know, comes out when you're in puberty, or, you know, in college, you know, I was attracted to women, and my mother said to me that, you know, she would much rather, and this is 1970, much rather me be pregnant than to be a lesbian. And so, like, that's something that always stuck with me, and I was like, oh my God, and I ran away for the summer to a friend of mine's house for like 8 weeks and just hung out there because I couldn't face my mother. I mean, as times went on, you know, my parents got much better with it, but I have to say I was very lucky because they let me be me, really, to a degree. They didn't push me this way or push me that way. The only thing my mother was adamant about, and I gave in to her because I didn't live at home after, you know, I went away to college, was, you know, you got to wear a dress here, you got to wear a skirt there. I hated it, but it was like, you know, calming the savage beast, because that was very important to my mother, what you looked like out in public, because that was that era. So I went along with it, but I didn't live in town, so I could do what I wanted to do when I wasn't in town. And, you know, I lived in a gay world. I didn't feel like I belonged there, but because I liked a woman, I was in the gay world. But I can tell you that I most certainly was the wrong personality in the wrong body. And it hurt me a lot through the way I navigated life, because if I was my personality in a man's body, I would have gone much further than in a woman's body.
Say a little bit more about that.
I think, you know, basically in corporate life, it caused a lot of grief, because I spoke out like a man and I wasn't seen that way, and so I was always pushed and poo-pooed to the side. And, you know, now after transitioning, I can absolutely tell you that there's a difference between the way men and women are treated, at least in my instance and for my life. And it's almost like I'm me in my body now, and I don't have to work hard to overcome the visibility of sort of looking like a woman, but, you know, being a man. And it's such peaceful, and it's such a relief, because I can just be me now, and it's not a lot of extra effort that you have to put forth to sort of shave those corners off to fit in that round hole.
Yeah, so you lived 20 years kind of the way people perceived you as a lesbian couple, and then that relationship ended, and then you had some kind of epiphany or awakening saying, I don't need to live like this anymore.
Well, all through our 20-year relationship, my partner used to say to me, when is enough enough? And I used to equate that with money, you know, thinking work, 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 when's enough enough, when's enough money? But I came to realize that it wasn't the money, after all. It was something much more deep than that. And it was trying to search to be me. And so after that relationship, when it was in my mind, I talked to my cousin and I said, this is what I want to do, and I just did it, you know, because I was older at that point, so I didn't need anybody's permission. I didn't care what my family said, you know, because I wasn't young. You know, I felt like I had to make up for all the years that I lived the wrong way. You know, the years you can't get back. So, you know, that's where I am, and that's why I've gone back at this point in my life to try and talk to the younger generation to say how important it is to transition early.
Right.
So that you can put it behind you or on the back burner and go forward and try and live a life that I tried to skirt around. It made me stronger in a lot of ways, but I tried to skirt around because I just really didn't feel comfortable.
Right.
But I didn't know exactly what to do with it.
And what did you have to do to transition?
You mean the protocol, or what?
What did you do?
Well, I mean, you have to go through, you know, the WPATH standards, which is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. There's certain standards, the care standards, and there's certain legal things that you should do to transition from A to Z. Now, not everybody does that, though. Okay, you have to go to therapy, you know, for a minimum of 3 months, and you have to live, you have to pass, you know, as the person you want to be in life for at least a year. It used to be 2 years. They've now shortened it before you can. I hate to use the word qualify, but you know, obtain obtain hormones if that's the route you want to go, and surgery if that's the route you want to go.
And what did you choose to do?
Well, I did it all. I mean, you know, I went on the hormones immediately because in my middle 50s, there was no question. You know, there wasn't a therapist that was going to sit here and tell me I was wrong and you can't do it. I mean, honestly, or guide me in a different way. You know, I went in, I did what I had to do. I got on hormones. I arranged all the surgeries in a timely fashion, and just had all the surgeries done.
And how long was that process?
3 years. But I mean, you know, most people, 2 of the surgeries were medically approved because of issues from family, or you know, just hysterectomy was approved because I had a lot of fibroids, so that they of course took that out without, you know, saying it's elective surgery, and the breast surgery was prophylactic, and so we got rid of that. But when it came to actually doing the bottom surgery, it came out of my pocket. You know, there are health insurances covering it today. It's getting better in California. You know, most of the health insurance.
So if it doesn't cover, what is it that
it comes out of your pocket, you know, and it could be 30,000,
wow.
80,000. It depends on, you know, there's many surgeries connected with bottom surgeries, like 6 or 7 surgeries, and you know, if you go overseas, it may be a little less expensive, and they're very good doctors overseas, and there are good doctors in the country. It could be, you know, it's almost like a, I hate to use this word, but it's almost like a smorgasbord, because you don't have to do every single type of surgery. You can discuss with the doctor, I want to do this, or don't do that, or do this, and most of them are knowledgeable enough to be able to tell you, yes, we can do it, or no, we can't because, or yes, we can because. And then, you know, many people, especially if they're in their 20s and 30s, that's what they do. They work and they save up for surgery like people work and save up for vacation.
Wow.
Only it's way more expensive. Way more expensive.
You know, when you think of it, and I'm sure you have thought of it, it's, you know, and we were talking before, life can be really difficult for anybody. And, but here you've got this huge kind of component that preoccupies your life, requires energy and time and effort, psychologically, emotionally, and money. And so now you get that finally, and not everybody gets to the point where they can do all of that.
Right.
And you get that out of the way, and you use the word peace, and I could really get it. It's like,
well, for me, and I'm sure that it seems to be the current theme for everyone, because when you listen to a lot of people who are transgender, or much less gay, actually, even that, when they talk about it, they say, I'm different. You know, I just knew I was different. That's kind of the term that it starts out. When transgender kids start to realize that they're a boy instead of a girl, and vice versa, there's a perseveration that goes on in the mind. You know, maybe not when you're 6 and 7, but as you get older, it goes on, and then there's gender dysphoria that goes along with it, and that's, you know, when you look in the mirror, you know, what you think you should have as body parts are not what you have, and people get very upset. They cover them. They don't want anything to do with it. And then,
did you experience it that way?
I had very little of it. I think because I was a strong mind, and that's just the way I believed, and I kind of looked from the throat up. You know, and I dealt with it because, again, in my day, I didn't know there were options to get around it, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to deal with this, so I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to ignore it and go on and just try and live in spite of whatever's going on. But what happened was the perseveration was so great, because everywhere I'd look, I would say, gee, you know, I want to look like that guy, and how come I don't look like this? And, you know, you look in a magazine, and that shirt will look good on me. And, you know, everything that was manly was what I was internally thinking about while trying to live my life all around it. And it's amazing because, you know, you never know what someone's thinking, no matter where they're at. And that's exactly what was going on, and it got tiring.
I can imagine it would be more than tiring. It would be exhausting.
And it overtook me, and so now what I try and prevent for the kids that are younger is not all those years of that. You know, to try and take this big like elephant in the room, so to speak, and make it as small as you can. You know, it'll be over your shoulder, but go on and live life the way you were supposed to live it, and to deal with, you know, work problems or kid problems or school problems. You know, live with them full out without something else going on in the back of your mind.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, because, you know, you operate in the world as a man, and nobody would question that. And I think it would have been easy to kind of, whew, I've arrived, now let me just live my life. And yet you've chosen to live a very public life as a transgender man.
Right.
So that you can facilitate the process for other people.
Right, right. Well, I mean, when I first went through it, a friend of mine who was videographing something else, another project that I was doing, was saying, man, your whole transition is on this tape. You know, you should just tell your story. And I said, no, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not really sure about it. And then as I was going through the last surgery and I was recuperating, I said, you know what? I said, I want to debunk the myths that are out there surgically, especially for bottom surgery, because it's out there and it is successful and it does work. And there are many people who are very pleased with, you know, getting bottom surgery, which in this case would be a metoidioplasty or a phalloplasty. Because it seems like people say, well, I don't want to do it because it's not perfect yet. Well, we don't live in a perfect world. And if you're waiting for perfection of any kind, anywhere, I don't know. You've got to just, you know, take it where it is at this step in time and go forward. Yeah. And this snapshot in time gives you this type of surgery, and it's working. And if down the road something else comes available, so you may have a little minor adjustment to do here or there. But I know too many people that are very pleased. And
I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage, because you're doing surgery.
Right.
And it's permanent,
yes,
basically. And surgery is dangerous in any circumstance.
Right, right.
So there's a huge commitment, clearly. Are you in a relationship now? Do you date? Do you tell people? How do you kind of...
Right now, I'm not in a relationship because I'm trying to devote all my efforts to sort of, you know, spreading the word and speaking to kids in school and colleges, and as you said before, you know, coaching the family and or the person who wants to transition with, you know, oh my God, what do I do? From the time they feel they're transgender to the end of the journey for them, which could be surgery or not. And the other piece is, on the other end of that spectrum, the people that are older who have spent 10 years saving for surgery and they finally completed their last surgery and they go, okay, I'm done with my surgery. What do I do now with my life?
Yeah.
Because, you know, everything that I was looking for and planning for was about surgery. Well, I don't have any more of those. Now what do I do? So there's a lot of time to either catch up on or dreams that they're now free to sort of be creative about and go for it.
What are your dreams?
My dreams right now, because I'm sort of near the end, I'm looking back up the hill, I'm not looking down the hill, but are to try and, you know, help people. You know, if you can help one person, it's great, because I wish that was there when I was younger, but it wasn't. And I don't regret it because I'm a product of the times.
Right.
So if I can help someone not go through the years that I went through, and they can start early, because the time is now. You can't look anywhere and not see transgender this or transgender that. Yeah. I mean, it's all out there now. It's out, and there's a plethora of information on the internet, and a lot of it is good. And at least some of these kids can say, geez, there's somebody out there I'm talking to that's just like me. I'm not alone. And sometimes that's their only sense of support, because they may not get it at home, and that's an issue too. You know, to try and help kids get a decent foundation under their feet so they can handle bullying when and if, because it will. Sometimes it doesn't, but it does come along.
So I'm going to interrupt you there, because bullying clearly happens at many levels. Bullying from verbal bullying to life-threatening bullying. What is it that you teach people in those situations? Because, again, there are a lot of choices, and it's very easy to live afraid.
Right, and you know what? There isn't a perfect answer.
Right.
Okay? To me, if a person is able to get support when they're younger and feel good about themselves, okay, and they're not nervous or they're insecure, as everybody goes through their own identity in general, they are already building a strong foundation to be able to blow a lot of that stuff off because it's not sticking to them because they feel good about themselves. When you don't feel good about yourself, it's real easy to let those comments and all the naysayers come in and you absorb it and you try and own it. When you,
yes,
when
but
you,
so I have to question you
Yes.
just a little bit because I know there's no easy answer. I mean, you can do lifetimes of work on
Sure.
that. Most of us grow up feeling insecure and despicable at periods of time. And so there's no easy answer for that either. But this is an added, it's much more threatening, potentially.
right.
And so are there simple things that you could tell people that would be useful when they're in those situations?
Well, when you talk about the spectrum, I can't talk about the left or the right, but in the middle, you know, it helps if you have friends. And today, I think it appears that the kids today are more accepting. And so if you have some of your friends network with you, you know, a lot of times they end up supporting you as well through this, which is great. And you can always speak to the one child that has no friends. I mean, you know, we all have those type of situations in our lives. And the other thing is not to put yourself, as you would with anything else, in a situation that would leave you
Vulnerable to that.
Exactly, vulnerable to that. You know, with social media, it's harder. Because there's a lot of verbal banter that goes on. I mean, I'm from a different world, but my thing is you have a choice not to listen to that. And, you know, I know everybody can jump on me and go, oh, well, but, you know, again, I think the biggest thing, if they're kids that are younger, is to try and help build their character and support them and not make them feel that what they're doing is wrong. Because, again, when you can build that character, because transgender kids and people in general, most of them are pretty strong. You know, and again, we speak to the middle of that spectrum because, you know, you're going to have
Sure.
the oddities on any end, but they're strong, and they have to be strong because they're fighting, not inside of a paper bag, but they're fighting to get out of something to feel free.
Right.
And in doing so, they build an inner strength. At least many of the people that I have met are very strong, and you have to be that way, like you said earlier, to go through those surgeries because most people are afraid of an appendectomy or they're afraid of that, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot of these people are going through 3 or 4 surgeries.
Yeah.
And without support, may I add, you know, not everybody's got a family member
Right.
or a spouse or a partner or a friend that can help them. A lot of them are literally going through a lot of these surgeries without support, and there's tremendous network support. There are groups out there that have been supporting all over the world all these people going through surgery. They end up being their support.
Yeah, that's a very positive use of the internet.
Yes,
for
it is.
Sure.
It does.
I wanted to ask you, were there pivotal moments in your life that you can see shaped you to be, I mean, they all shape you, but usually we have one or two, either it's a person we met or something that happened that then changed our life course or the way we perceive life.
Well, I don't know if there was one or two, but I was thinking about this recently only because I'm writing a book. For me, growing up Jewish, I think, was a big thing. You know, just grew up conservatively as a Jewish person. I wasn't very Orthodox, and my parents weren't that way, but there's something about that Jewish mystique that, you know, my parents weren't going to let me sit home and do nothing. And, you know, every Saturday, you know, after breakfast, I'll see you at dinner, and, you know, always pushing me into doing everything. Because the mind was very important, intelligence was very important, and education was very important. And in doing so, I guess it always kept me busy, always kept me involved and engaged, and also helped me to build that strength from within.
Right.
And which, when I look back now, you know, allowed me, I guess, and I don't want to use this word because I did more than that, but allowed me to survive, you know, through a world that just truly wasn't where I wanted to be.
Right.
I mean, I don't have regrets about it because that was that time and that era. It's not like if that would happen today with everything out there and then it didn't happen, I would have regrets because everything is at your fingertips today to do something about it. There may have been some people. I had a grandmother who, you know, saw the best in everybody and loved me for whoever I was, and it didn't matter. So I'd have to say that, you know, she was pretty much an integral part of me and what I wanted to do, and she supported me no matter what it was, and into my latter years, because I mean I was in my 40s when she passed away, so I had the benefit of her idea of how life should be for a long time, because she, not being Jewish, marrying a Jewish man, you know, back in those days in the 20s, you know, put up with a lot of stuff, and she was able to turn many cheeks.
Wow.
And so, you know, I would say that there was a big benefit there, you know, from that.
You know, we're almost at the end of this segment of our interview, but one of the things that, you know, we always think, you know, my parents didn't and my parents did, and we all have these incidences, but it's not even about the specifics. For what I get from you is the generic, and it's not generic, but kind of the love that and acceptance that came from your grandmother. She may not have always said the perfect things. It's the same thing with your parents, who finally adjusted, but your parents also had you go out and participate and engage. And I think that for parents, it's important to realize that moment by moment, there are small episodes and even large episodes that don't feel good, but that underlying sense of being supported and of knowing that they are there and love you, I think is so powerful.
And I think, too, today, in that world, they raised me to be independent. Today, it's a little different, you know? And, you know, if something didn't work, you kept plugging at it till it worked. You don't quit. And, you know...
and I have to stop you on that one because we're at the end of this half-hour segment, but we're going to do another one. So thank you so much for this conversation.
It was great. Thank you.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.